Hello, and welcome to Here's the Thing with Robbie and Jose, where we explore relationships through a male and female perspective. With me, as always, is the lovely Robbie.
Hello, Jose.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm good. You kind of tripped me out because right before you hit record, you call me Harley Quinn. Is that because of my hair?
Yes,
I have piggy tails on.
you do.
It's a whole vibe.
You got to thank her for that too, because up until that time, the only other, let's say, character that had two,
Pippi.
it was either Pippi Longstocking or even worse, Petunia, Porky Pig's girlfriend.
Right.
You don't want to call him Petunia.
Yes. Thank you for calling me the hottest version of the three that you could have picked.
Yeah, but Pippi Longstocking was a great show. I used to love Pippi Longstocking. It was because I think she had like superpowers, like she could fly with her hair and stuff.
I don't remember the show. I remember the books, but even then it's real vague.
You really? I remember liking it. I remember, and I used to watch Gidget. You ever watch Gidget before?
No, but my parents do talk about it.
Sally Fields as Gidget. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
she was.
I like a piggy
super
tail
cute.
vibe every now and then. I'll put
Yeah.
on some piggy tails for fun.
Yeah, I've never had pigtails.
We should.
I get a ponytail because
Yeah, Jose has long hair,
Yeah.
so one of these days you should show up with piggy tails just
No,
for fun.
I think I'll
no?
be all right.
Okay.
Unless I'm Snoop Dogg. If I was Snoop Dogg, I can pull it off, but I'm not Snoop Dogg.
You don't know if you can or not. Maybe you do
No,
a tight
I'm pretty
tight
sure I
braid.
can't. I'm pretty sure I can't.
How do you know?
Because I know me and I know what I would look like with them on, and it would not
Just
be.
own it, and then
If I was like 20 years younger, sure. But like at this day and age, nah.
I think it'd be
Can't
fine.
do it. Can't do it.
Maybe one day I'll convince you. Today we're getting into a topic that I think most people will be able to relate to, but I tried to look up some numbers on it online and I couldn't find any, but it's dating people with kids. Now, I was
You were
thinking,
looking for like statistics?
yeah, like basically how many people have dated someone with kids before.
Oh, okay.
And I couldn't find anything. I don't know why.
It's got to be everybody in this day and age.
I
feel.
know, because I was thinking about back in the day, and I'm talking about like way back in the day. Really, the only time you were with someone that had kids prior is if maybe they were a widow. You know what I mean? Like war times and stuff. You lost your husband. Maybe you get married again. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But like
Yeah.
back then, and even before child support and all of that stuff. I mean, there was guys out there that had kids, but like if you don't want to take care of them, you would never know
Yeah.
that the guy that you're dating has
I would
kids.
say, and I don't want to digress too much because I know it's this one that you had looked up, but I would say that back in the day, which was a Wednesday, by the way, just a fun fact for you. But back in the day, it was, I'm thinking 80s, 90s perhaps. If you were going to date a woman that had kids, it was almost implied you better be serious about dating. This is not going to be a casual dating situation. I mean, I guess it could be,
Yeah.
but like if you have children, and let's just say for the sake of argument that the dude left, the father just was an absent father and was nowhere in sight.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard for her, right? Like
Yeah.
she's human. She wants to, find a mate, but also she's not in the business of, I'm not going to casually date a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
So you almost had to have that mindset, like, okay, if you date, like this is, you know what I mean? Like you better be serious. This is not a hookup or,
Yeah.
whatever.
I think the other thing too that changed with that is that divorce is more rampant now, and it wasn't so much back in the day. So again, I mean, I'm not saying that every married couple has children, but I mean it's pretty common. So if you're dating again after divorce, I mean, like I said, most people that are dating, even younger people, I'm not saying teen pregnancy wasn't a thing back then, but again, it wasn't as common as it is now. So
Yeah.
it's like, even if you date someone who's 20, they may already have a kid with someone else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it happens to a lot of us. Now, I have dated several men that have had children. I know you date women that have children.
I have children, so I'm a single.
That's true. That's another part we can kind of get into later of dating someone with kids, but when you also have kids. But all of my personal experiences with it have all been different. And that's kind of interesting too, because you're basing it on the kids are different, obviously, but even the dynamics between like my boyfriend and his ex, the whole situation. It's
Baby mama.
Yeah, baby mama. It's all kind of different. So yeah, I kind of wanted to get into just some pros and cons of dating someone with kids. And like I said, we can talk about, I don't have children, but in the end, if you want to talk about you have children and dating someone else with kids, kind of what that's like. But I kind of want to go in the cons first because I'm going to be honest, this list is longer.
Got a lot of cons, is it?
But one of the things that's happened to me is when you have a breakup, that other person using the kid as a weapon. So in my scenario, I was with a guy for a long time. The relationship had ended, and he had a daughter. And I'm not going to say the daughter and I were close, but we had spent time together, and she was fairly young. He was kind of forcing her to write me letters and get me little gifts. Basically, he was trying to win me back, and he was using his daughter, which I thought was completely, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't want to use the word disgusting, but it's not cool.
I mean,
it's very manipulative. And then I don't know, I don't know what kind of psychological effects that has on the young kid, but it's just like, oh, like he's not saying it to her like this, I'm sure, but it's like, well, let's get Robbie back. So let's write her a letter, draw her a picture. And then it kind of puts you on the spot a little bit, because it's like, or if you call and let's say you pick up the phone or something and it's the daughter and not him on the phone. She's like, hi, like, I don't know. Has that ever happened to you?
That what?
Where they try to use the kid as a weapon. Like, let's say if you're dating someone for a little while and you're hanging out with the kid and then it doesn't work out and they're like, oh, well, little Jeffrey misses you.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, that's part of it, right? So whenever you date somebody, so in general, I do not introduce my kids to the woman I'm dating unless it's gotten semi-serious.
Yeah.
So anywhere between maybe 3 to 6 months, if we've been dating steadily and like it's actually turned into a thing, it's not just a casual thing, then I do it, because they're going to get to know that person. And if they like that person and it doesn't work out, that's a bit traumatic, because now you've taken that away, especially if they really got along together.
But I don't see this any different from when you get a divorce and you use the kids as the weapon in a divorce. I don't think this is any different. It's still a manipulation thing.
No, it is, but it's different in a divorce because you kind of want to make it work because of the kids. So you want to give it your best shot. Now, again, sometimes the differences are too vast, right? It's just maybe you're two different people now, but there is something to be said about, raising your kids with both their mother and their father.
Yeah.
Like, they just have a better chance at it.
I know, but
if you can work it through for them, if that's your driving force, and then it turns into something great, but you can't force it either. If at the end of the day it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But,
well, this person was trying to use the kid as like just another, like, trying to get me back. You know what I mean? Because like I said, we had been dating for a while. So it's like, I just thought it was really, I don't know.
But they do that. So, I mean, sometimes I date women that have, sons or whatever. And they like how I am, because I come off as a father a lot. Maybe not so much on this show, but I do, right, in my normal life or whatever. And I'm pretty responsible. I take my kids into consideration, and so for them, they sometimes, and I've heard this before, like, you're a good role model for my son, and so like, it's not that they're trying to get me to stay or anything like that, but it's also a thing of like, they really do want me to be a part of their lives, because they're like, he doesn't really have a role model. He doesn't have a father. He doesn't know that, and he kind of needs this. Yeah. And, hopefully they like me too. Yeah. And they're not just doing it for that, but I can see that. I can see where they're like, yeah, like, maybe we should try to make it because you're good for my son. And they're just really just trying to do the best for their kid. So, but I don't, your situation in that particular instance, I don't know, but I have heard that a lot. Yeah. Where they're like, like, you're a good role model. But the problem is, again, you can't, because I've known a lot of people too, that after they break up, they'll still keep in touch with the kid. And because they've gotten really close. Let's say, for instance, if you're dating a gal and she has a son and he's into baseball and you're into baseball, and you've taught him a few things, and you've taken him out to the batting range, like you're really connected on more of you have your own relationship, right? Aside from the mother. Yeah. Then you break up with her. Now you're like, okay, what do I do? Do I just totally, like, am I breaking up with him too? And sometimes you have to. Yeah. Because you can still hang out, but it could get, I don't know, it could cause problems, because let's say you still like the mother and she didn't like you anymore, and now she's dating some other dude and you're taking her son out. Right. To the batting range and taking him out to practice while she's out on a date with another dude. Yeah. You might feel a certain kind of way about that, because it's not, and I'm not not, I don't want to be too crass about it, but at the end of the day, it's really not your son.
Right.
And that's his mother. And, maybe she wants to make it work with another dude. So you're going to have to let her do that.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to detach yourself from, as much as it might hurt, and it
Right.
might, but you just have to do the best you can while you were there. And, but then you're like, no, I gotta step back a little bit.
That's actually another con that I had is getting close to the kid, and then you guys break up, and depending on the age range, right? Like if they're a baby, I guess you could still be kind of close to them. But if they're at that ripe age, like you said, if you guys played baseball together a lot and that's just what you did, the relationship ends. It's hard for you. It's hard for the kid. You know what I mean? That's the other thing too. And the same with marriages or whatever. It's like when you guys get divorced, it's affecting the whole family. It's not just you two anymore. And when you have children like that, if you were dating a woman for 3 years and she had a teenage son and you got really close with that kid, it's hard. Because what do you do? To your point, it's like, do I cut off ties completely? Or do you still try to do that thing where she's out on a date with another guy and you're playing baseball? It's a weird scenario.
For me, I have to cut off ties.
Yeah.
I have to. And that's the downside of breakups.
Yeah.
I mean, because sometimes, even if they don't have kids, sometimes, because they start out as friends, let's say you date and you're friends and whatnot, and then you break up. Well, yeah, obviously, the physical part's not going to be there, but the friendship kind of still is, but you kind of have to let it go anyway. So
Right.
it's hard because it's like, well, I don't find you romantic anymore, right? I don't attractive in that way, but I did enjoy your company. So now what do you do? Again, you have to walk away in most cases,
Yeah.
or maybe give it a little time and then maybe reach out afterwards and just see if you can form a friendship. But even then, you just never know.
I'm not friends with any of my exes, nor would I want to be, but there are some scenarios where if it ends, and there's no drama and you guys are friends, I mean, you could still be cordial, but to hang out with your ex, I know it happens, but there's circumstances that have to align for you to be able to do that. And one, you're not interested physically with them at all anymore. It's just hanging out. But two, the other person has to feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a little bit of a red flag for me if you're still hanging out with your ex.
yeah.
Sorry to say, but it is. But I'm sure it would be the same way for me, right? If I was dating a woman, I was like, yeah, I'm still really good friends with all my exes.
Yeah.
She's going to be like, well, why?
I was talking to somebody about this topic the other day, and they were saying that one time they had dated a woman with children, and I think it was, okay, he was dating her, but she had broken up with another guy, and the other guy was close to the kids. These were not his biological kids. This was just another guy she was dating before him. And that guy was still hanging out with the kids.
I've been there
And
too.
the guy that I was talking to about it, he was just like, yeah, I felt some type of way because you're already having to kind of share it with the dad. But now there's this other dude that you shouldn't really be conversing with at all. It's not his son.
Right.
It complicates things.
Yeah. And the reverse happens too. What if you don't get along with their kids? Now you got a different issue now because let's say you're getting along.
You're not my dad.
Right. Right. Because again, they're kids. So they might have had some trauma and
Yeah.
they don't know any better. Right. But let's say they're acting out or whatever, and you're trying to make it work with the mother, and the mother really likes you and you really like her. But if the kid doesn't like you, it's an uphill battle. It's
Yeah.
an uphill battle. And, you see on dating profiles all the time where, women say, my kids come first, my kids come first. And like that's fine, like totally understand it. But just know that when I read that, and any man reading that also has to be okay with being second.
Yeah.
And if they're not, and there's a lot of dudes just like any woman, like if I were to say, I wouldn't be able to get away with that if I was like, I put my kids first and this and that. Because initially I've heard women say like, oh no, I totally get that. But at a certain point they start like, no, I need to be first now because we're together, blah, blah, blah. It turns into a problem at some point. But it's hard because again, you're trying to make a relationship and you're trying to be a father. And again, if the kid is going through trauma, it might not be that they just don't dislike that person.
Yeah.
They just might be upset about the fact that their parents are no longer married.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't like you. They might not know you. They just
Right.
know that you are the guy that's stepping in for, whatever.
And they're children. They don't know how to be reasonable. Like,
No. I mean, they want both their parents. Sure.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
That's actually another one of the cons I have is feeling like you're an outsider, feeling like you are the number two in that. So if it's not your biological kid, and I'm not saying always, but sometimes you're going to feel like you don't really fit into this puzzle, right? And feeling like that can hurt. You know what I mean? Because you want to be involved and you want to have that feeling of the familyness, togetherness. But like to your point, if the kid doesn't like you and they're making every interaction difficult, I mean, you try to be understanding because they're the child and you have to be the bigger person. But, and also too, like, let's say that you guys have been dating long term. And if the woman doesn't give you the ability to really discipline that kid, let's say that you try and maybe she comes back and says, he's not your son. Don't try to discipline my kid. And it's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do here? Your kid's acting up. We've been together for 5 years. Come on now. You got to give me something.
There you go.
I'm not saying you should beat the kid, but like, you know what I mean?
No,
if
I don't.
you're serious in a
anybody like that.
relationship, I can't just be sitting here letting this kid act a fool to me or doing something else. And then like, I'm not allowed to say anything because I'm not their biological mother.
Yeah.
It's a really hard position.
Which is why, again, I don't merge or I don't bring those two worlds together until I know that it would be something that it could possibly turn into long term.
I think you should wait to make sure. But like I said, in these scenarios I'm thinking of, these are all like long-term relationships where it's still, you know what I'm saying? All these things usually arise due to that. In my experience, you know me, I don't really have short-term relationships. So it's like most of the men that I date that have children were long-term. And it's just like, okay, how many more years do I have to be here for you to give me a little bit of leeway with this?
Yeah, a lot. I had a stepdad and I didn't like him for the majority of my childhood. It wasn't until I became an adult. And even then, much later.
Is it just because it was a new man in the family that you're like, why
wasn't
are you
his
here?
fault. He just didn't know anything about parenting, and it wasn't his fault.
He didn't have any kids on his. Oh, okay.
When he met my mom, he didn't, and so he just didn't know anything about parenting. He didn't know anything about how to deal with kids or teenagers, and I was already a teenager at that time, so I just didn't like him. And
I bet you were hard to deal with.
I was extremely difficult to deal with. Yes, I had a chip on my shoulder. I was very. Yeah, it was. I you know that, and now I appreciate it now because he stuck with her for all these years, and now he's wonderful. And we get along, and the relationship could be better. But at the time, it was absolutely horrible.
And that's some of that too of just being a kid and being a teenager. And I don't know, like I remember being a certain way when I was a teenager, and then you grow up and you realize you're like, oh, I was being a jerk, and I've apologized to my parents. I'm like, man, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like you just, but yeah, if you're a step parent, it's probably even harder, like for that person.
It's a tough gig, man. It's a tough gig, which is, you know, why I give it up to any, you know, step parents, both male or female, that stick it through, and like, you know what I mean? Like props to those people because it's extremely difficult. And most people throw in the towel because they're like, this is too much. I can't do this. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, and again, I don't want to overstep, but it can work out sometimes in the sense that like if you have kids and they have kids and then they merge and then they all get along.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
Because then you can do family events.
Yeah.
Like bowling or museums or aquariums and going out to the park and camping, you know, whatever. I'm getting going on. The things that, so I like family events, and I like to sometimes bring my kids out because you do it all together. You bring all your worlds together at one place, right? So my kids, my girlfriend, her kids, like let's go do
all
this.
come together. Yeah, that's nice. Another con, and this is, I guess this would be the number one thing, is dealing with baby mama, baby daddy drama. And I've had this in my life. I don't know if you have, but in my scenario, it was an extreme. Sometimes the other person can't let it go that the relationship didn't work out, and they try their best to just destroy you and your relationship with their baby daddy. And I don't know. I don't know why people keep trying to hold on, and I think that they actually believe that if I make things that hard, he'll just come back to me. If I make it too hard for him to date, too hard for him to move on.
It could be that. It could be they don't want to see you happy either.
I mean, that's true, but it's in some scenarios, they're trying to win you back, and they just feel like, I have heard men say this all the time. It's like, it's just easier to go back with her because the drama that she's giving me it's too much.
I would disagree with that assessment, but
well, I'm just saying.
But like, and not, and then we're obviously talking about the extreme, right? But just in the moderate, right? And you don't know the reason behind it, but let's say, the kids go back and forth between their spouses, right? So if I'm
Mm,
dating a girl and I make plans for a certain weekend when I know that she's not going to have the kids, and
right.
then like last minute come to find out he's not picking them up, throws off your whole entire plan, especially if
Right.
you were going to get away. Now you got a problem
Right.
because you either have to find a babysitter, try to find somebody, and if that's not a real feasible option,
Yeah.
then you just have to cancel the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so
And you have to be understanding because it's like, it's not her fault.
you don't have to be, but it helps.
Well, yeah, you don't have to be, but in that instance, it's not the woman's fault. If the guy just whatever, he's like, oh, I'm not gonna pick him
It's
up,
not, but
or
it's the baby mama or baby daddy
oh,
drama.
I
And so
know,
it's not, and it might not even be drama, but let's just say that other person, they have a date.
inconveniences.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if they have a date
Yeah,
and they're like, hey, we're not going to be able to pick up the kids. They're not going to tell you always why,
yeah,
but maybe they're going out with their, if you're dating a gal and then she's like, oh yeah, he's going to go with his girlfriend. So now
yeah,
you're upset
yeah,
because it's like, well, I had plans. It's supposed to be my weekend. That's why I made it for this weekend. But now you're throwing me a curveball because you don't want to pick them up because you made plans.
yeah.
Now we got a problem. And then whether or not you wanted drama, you're about to get a few.
I mean, that's annoying, but I could deal with that much more than the other part. And maybe it's just because I've dealt with that in my past of someone just wanting to be with that person and not being able to let it go. And I don't, torment is really honestly the right word because that person was tormenting this guy and me in every aspect of our lives. And it's just, I don't understand. Like I said, that end game, I think it's some women believe like if I just make it hard enough, he'll just be like, okay, you've won, basically. I'll come back to you and just, I mean, maybe
I don't think it ever works. I mean, whether or not he went back, I
he
don't
may
know.
just have affairs where later on, but
Yeah,
at
but
least
it's I think it's more along the line that sometimes both male and men and women get territorial.
yeah,
So even if you've broken up, it's like, no, you're still mine. Or in other words, I'm still trying to manipulate your time, and I'm still. This is my only outlet to still kind of mess with you, so to
yeah.
speak. And this is what I'm going to do because they know what weekends they're supposed to pick them up. So even in the scenario that I just told you,
It's just so, it's so petty. And like, I know it hurts and I know it sucks. But if the relationship doesn't work out, you need to try to be as mature as possible and just say, okay, it didn't work out. Let me just do me. Like, just do yourself. Try to make yourself happy.
man,
But
easier
like,
said than done. And here's the thing about
I know,
kids
but I
too.
just,
The problem with kids, or not the problem, but the thing about kids is that they're obviously a reflection of both you and that person.
yeah,
So it's a constant reminder.
yeah.
You don't get to forget. It's not like a normal breakup where, let's
Yeah,
say,
you
you
look at
rip
them
up.
and it's like, you look like my ex.
Exactly. And especially if
Mm,
they act like your ex and stuff. So my kids are very influenced by me.
mm,
So they act a lot like me and I can see it. And if
yeah,
I see it, I know other people that are around me that know me
yeah.
see it in them. So it's a constant reminder on that end too. It's like,
I get that, but I mean, don't try to meddle with their new relationship. Like, it just makes you look like the foolish one. It's only hurting yourself. It's when they talk about forgiveness in general. When you don't forgive, you're the one that's carrying that burden, not the other person.
yeah, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit too, is like you don't know the relationship, right? So sometimes, let's say it ended badly because, let's say he messed up and
Yeah,
he cheated, and so she's really hurt about that, and she didn't deal with it, and so now he's quote unquote living his best life with his new
it's
hot
hard.
girlfriend, and she's feeling a certain kind of way because let's say, and I know this because like for me it's the same thing. Like I take care of my kids the majority of the time, and it's like I know that she'll take trips and do things and with her boyfriend, which I'm happy for her,
Yeah,
but it imposes on mine because it's like that was my weekend
right,
to do something and I had plans and now I can't do it because
right.
you decided that you were going to forego your responsibilities and just go do whatever you want to.
Yeah,
And then it's like now I'm a little upset because you're imposing on my time. She doesn't want to get me back. She's just being selfish at that point. So she's
right.
not, it has nothing to do with her trying to jeopardize or sabotage my
She's just
relationship.
being
She's
inconsiderate.
just exactly. And that's the point. So now you're having to contend with that
Yeah,
and then still trying to maintain a relationship when you're still upset. And you have the kids to contend with too. And you're trying not to lose your cool and badmouth them. But it's just
right.
like, I had this thing planned for like a month. And they tell me at the last minute that they can't pick them up. Right. And just like,
Would it help in that scenario to have like a backup family member that like,
You can. That's what I'm
yeah,
saying. If you can do that, but that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. It was all contingent on the fact that they were going to pick him up that weekend,
yeah,
which is why we set it up. Let's say you were taking her away for the weekend, going out to a cabin or something. Now you can't do any of that.
yeah,
So now, whether you like it or not, because of somebody else's actions, and again, it might not have been that they were trying to sabotage you, but
mhm,
now you got a problem. And so now you need to kind of work through it and try to
yeah,
figure out what to do. And it's difficult.
yeah,
The logistics of it, let's just call it that,
yeah.
are difficult to maintain.
I also dated someone that was married prior and they had a child and they were completely amicable with each other and there was no real issues like between in regards to that point. So like sometimes it can work out where both parties are being mature and being understanding. It happens. I've seen it firsthand. So it is a possibility. Is that the norm? No.
I mean, look, here's the other downside to that is I'm great when they're amicable for the kids, but it can go too far. And when they're like, oh, like let's say I'm meeting a girl and she says, yeah, we always have a family movie night with my ex and the
Hmm.
kids, and I'll go over to his place and we all have movie night, and I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
like you know what I mean? I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that because
Right.
I'm happy that you're doing that for the kids, but I'm also a little concerned
Right.
that you're hanging out with your ex and
Right.
all chilling out together, and I don't know how to do that. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It's like, okay, where does that put me? Do I get to go over for movie night too
Right.
with everybody? Because I haven't been invited. You're just telling me what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so you kind of almost, and I hate to put it this way, but if you plan on dating somebody, I guess if they're okay with it,
Hmm.
then I guess you can continue. But let's say they're like, hey, I kind of feel a certain kind of way about it. You kind of almost have to alter that a little bit,
Yeah.
because the problem is when you get into a relationship, there's going to be some compromise. There always is.
Hmm.
So let's just say you're a guy and every Friday you go out to a strip club with your boys. And then you meet somebody and it's like, hey, this is tradition for us. We just go to strip. You can't do that
Yeah.
anymore because she's going to feel it. Or even if you're going to the club, it doesn't even have to be extreme to the strip club.
Yeah.
Let's just say we always go out to the clubs every Friday night with my boys. It's just me and my boys. Like, I'm not going to invite you, basically, is what I'm
Hmm.
trying to tell you.
Yeah.
She's going to feel a certain kind of way about that. And she's
Yeah.
like, okay, but we're together now. So do you think that's appropriate for
Right.
you to be going out to the
That's actually
clubs?
another one of my cons on here is having to always be around the ex, having to trust that in those scenarios. And look, if you have kids and you're not with that person anymore, the father, the mother, whatever, and you want to date again, I feel like you as the person have to be a little bit more understanding of you probably shouldn't be doing those movie nights anymore. I'm sorry. Like, it's not that there's going to be events, birthday parties, graduations. There's going to be things where the other person has to be there. And I totally get that. And I, as a mature person, can understand that if I date someone with kids, like, yeah, you're going to have to be around that person.
Mhm.
But going over to hang out, to watch movies and eat, like, I'm sorry, but like if you're wanting to do that, you probably shouldn't be dating because I can't imagine anyone being totally fine with that.
I can't either. If I were to say that, I don't imagine any woman being like, "Oh, that's super cool."
Yeah,
No, I don't see it.
that's what I'm saying. I don't think that you should be dating at that point because there has to be respect, just like with the club thing or whatever. And you may say that like you start newly dating somebody and they have a kid and they say, I like you, but just to let you know up front, I do hang out with my ex
Mhm.
and this is the things that we do. You have that choice at that point. You can be like, I mean, me personally, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm not okay
Well,
with
that's what I'm
that.
saying. Like on the dating sites, right? When they say, "Look, my kids come first, and that's it," right? Like I get that. That gives me at least the choice because I
Right.
get that they're the priority. And
Right.
if that's the thing, then basically you're telling me I'm always going to be second, no matter what.
Yeah.
And if I'm okay with that, then I can move forward. If I'm not okay with it, then I'm like, okay, I appreciate it. Obviously, this is not for me, right?
Hmm.
Not because of, I'm not upset. I commend them, but at the same time, it's like, okay, they're gonna do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to read between the lines, and it's like, okay, what does that mean exactly? Because I'm not, you dating me doesn't mean that that you're not gonna take care of your kids. I'm not, you know what I'm not saying that
Right.
when I come in, like forget everything else. I get that that's your responsibility, but what does that mean that they come first? Does that mean that, again, if just for the sake of the kids, you're going to do the movie night, or let's say it's not even that. Let's say they have a family night with both the parents where they go bowling or they always do an activity. It's like, where does that put me
Yeah,
exactly?
but if you guys decided to break up the marriage or whatever, you both came to this conclusion, isn't that kind of implied that things are not going to be the way that they were when you were married? I'm
You would think.
sorry.
You would think.
Like, I just don't understand. Like, why? Like I said, there's certain events, I get that. But like, and even in that event, if it was a birthday party, she could bring you.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't really love it, but at least I'm here. She brought me. They're having to get together
Yeah.
for this party. But the people who are just like, yeah, he just comes over every Friday night and he spends the night on the couch and that's just what we do. I don't think anyone would be okay with that. If they were, it's because they have a bunch of people like that they're dating and they're just like, I don't care, do whatever you got to do. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's tough, you know, in each one of those circumstances, and you just really don't know.
Yeah.
And also as a parent, let's say that your kids are hanging out with the other person's new boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. You don't know those people,
Right.
so you might feel a certain kind of way, like you don't know who they are. Maybe they're not good for your kids.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know. You just
And you
don't
really
know.
can't do much. I had a scenario where I knew someone where the marriage didn't work out and they started dating. The woman was dating a guy who was a registered sex offender. He was in jail for pedophilia or something of that sort.
Sure.
What do you do? I mean, I guess you can go back to court, but maybe, I don't know. But if he's out of jail now, can you really, unless the documents state he can't be a certain distance away from a child? I don't know.
No, I don't see anybody. I wouldn't understand why anybody would want to date
Again, I mean,
somebody
it's,
with like that. But
I don't know. You can't control what anybody else does on a normal basis, but especially if that person loathes you, they may also, to your point, try to do things that are just really inconsiderate because it's like, it didn't work out. I don't care. I just think general respect should be kind of number one. But another con, and this has happened to me too. And maybe this is just for men. I don't know. You can tell me.
just for men, like the beard, little gray thing. Sorry,
Yeah,
I got a bunch of little white hairs everywhere.
like when I'm dating a guy and they have a child, and some men, I'm not saying they don't do fatherly things, but taking care of children typically is just more of a woman's thing. It's just more natural for us. But in my scenario, this guy was, when he would come over or do things with me, him, and the child, it was like he automatically was like, you deal with it. Like I was like the fill-in mother, you know what I mean? Because you don't want to take care of your kid. It's your weekend. You bring him over so the three of us can hang out. And then I'm having to take care of your kid. Now, granted, we were in a long-term relationship and I cared about his daughter. So it's like, I get it, but it's like, I'm not her mother. You shouldn't come over here with the intention of, yeah, you need to make sure she's fed, bathe her and all this. It's like, but this isn't my kid. And you're just pawning her off at that point.
It happens both ways.
Okay.
To be honest with you, because I've heard women say to me, you know, if you're getting with me, is it because you're looking for a mother figure for your kids, and vice versa? Some women, they're looking for a father figure. Like that's the objective of the dating. Like I want to date somebody that's also going to be a father. Like that's what
hard
they're.
to say that though.
It is, but that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They really genuinely are looking for that.
You think there's men out there that just are genuinely, like, if they don't have kids, they're just looking to be a father to anybody?
No, I don't think anybody really does that on a male or female. I don't think they go into a relationship thinking I'm going to be a father or mother to this child that I don't know.
Yeah.
I think some people are just more nurturing. They're just better around kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with kids for the most part. I'm better with like little toddlers and stuff because I can play like, you know, get on the floor, and I like doing that, playing cars or Legos and doing stuff and ramming stuff, and you know, you get the cars with make noise. Like I actually enjoy that. But
Yeah. Well,
but
it's
then,
easy for men to play with children because there's no real the conflict you were talking about earlier with teenage kids and all that.
yeah,
There's
that's
none of that.
That's a different
Yeah.
thing. That's a different thing because once they're teenagers, they're going through hormones. They're not really thinking straight. And so they're
Yeah.
being, they could be like a little smart alecky,
Yeah.
or they don't really want to be your friend, or whatever the case may be.
Mm.
So in my experience, when they do have children, and I take it very slow and very easy in my
Yeah.
conversations with them, very surface level, unless they want to, get to know me more or whatever. But I don't usually force the issue. Like, if you're comfortable with me, or if you don't like me, that's fine too, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I kind of bleed over to some of the pros now because it kind of leads into that. If you are unable to have children, or you didn't have children for some reason, whatever the reason is, and let's say that you've reached a certain age and you are dating someone with children, you may get to experience some of that stuff. You know what I mean? That otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So if you were 40 and you never have kids, and then you start dating someone with kids, maybe you like that, to be able to do the family type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
could
that's, I do know some people who didn't have children, but they got married to someone that does have kids already.
Yeah.
And they kind of just stepped in and was like, I don't mind being their mom. Like, I like this. I didn't have kids of my own.
I
It's
think
enjoyable.
I think that comes secondary. It's always going to be secondary, even, because you have to like the person a lot.
Yeah.
And then you're willing to accept. But that's the case in no matter what the relationship is. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and you like that person, you're going to tolerate a lot more
Yeah.
than you ordinarily would if you didn't like them as much.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that you have to tolerate their kids, but it's like, if you really genuinely love that person, like, the kids are part of the extension. So you're going to put forth a lot more effort
Yeah.
to get along with them and try to make it work, because they're also a significant part of their life. So you're going to do your best because, again, you care for them.
Yeah.
So
If the relationship isn't good and their kids are acting like jerks, you're like, I'm
that's
out.
what I'm saying. If you semi like them and you're
Yeah.
like, no, I don't like you enough to put up with all of this stuff.
Right.
But again, it has nothing to do with kids exactly, although it is harder.
Yeah.
It has to do with how much you care for that person. Because
Yeah.
again, if that person just does a bunch of annoying things, but all the other things and all the other qualities that you like about them kind of supersede that,
Yeah.
then you'll make it work. Because it's like, yeah, you do a few things that I don't care for,
Yeah.
but you do a whole lot more that I do like.
Yeah, but if you didn't have kids and you reach that age and you find a woman, and let's say she has kind of younger kids, and maybe your dream was to be a father and it just didn't work out for you for whatever reason, and you find this woman and you fall in love with her, and then you may really enjoy the family events and all that stuff, and you get to have some of that in your life, even though they're not your biological children, but it's like you get to experience some of that. I think too, honestly, like I don't have children, but I have experienced a lot of things I have a lot of nieces and nephews. And so like those little things, it is really nice because it's not like I never got any, you know what I mean, involvement in that. So I've gotten a lot of joy out of going to their games and birthday parties and stuff like that, that if you never had kids, I don't know, like you may start to look for someone who already has children so you can get that enjoyment.
Yeah, I guess it could be. I mean, I think there are people that are just naturally good mothers and naturally good fathers.
Yeah.
And then I think, whenever you come across a guy, let's say he doesn't have any kids, right? There is still that instinct that you want, right? It might not be as powerful as with women when they want to have children, for whatever reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there's it's finite, you can't have, women at a certain point, you just can't have kids anymore. Men can.
Right.
But I think if you find a guy and he's just a natural teacher, a natural, he likes to share his experience, he likes to help out and things like that, they're just naturally good at it.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say is that a lot of times when you have kids with people, that's not always considered. It's always considered after. So let's say they fall in love with a guy, but he's never really been responsible, really never really cared about doing stuff, and really doesn't have that fatherly instinct, but you have kids with them anyways. And then of course, let's say he's very selfish and he runs out and he's like, I have no interest in being, I want to have fun. Like I'm a bachelor. I want to do this, that, and he's gone. Now you have to try to find somebody, or hopefully the next person that you find does have that, because it's missing in that kid's life.
Right.
But a lot of times those guys already have kids too. So but that's the downside of that, is that, it's the downside and the good side. They come in and kind of fill in for that person. Unfortunately, it would have been better probably if you had kids with that guy, because he's already proven.
Yeah.
And most of the time when you have kids, it's weird because you don't take that into consideration. You're mostly like, I love this person, I'm attracted to this person, and then let's have kids.
Yeah.
Which is not really a good criteria for because don't get me wrong, like I you should have children. I think it's good to have a family, but what I think is you should always also kind of take into consideration, what is this person going to be like in a father? And it's not always evident, right? But if they're party guys or whatever, you might want to think like, okay, is this a phase for this person? And even with the female, because there's party girls out there and they just like to party. And then you look at them and you're like, could she be a good mother? Like and I'm not saying that, we all have our phases.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people can't change. I'm just saying that when the child is born, then you'll find out.
Right.
Because either they'll continue doing what they've been doing before, and that's how you found them, or they might say, you know what, I can't do those things anymore because now I have a responsibility. But you just don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to gauge that.
Yeah.
What I will say is that responsibility does play a lot into it.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's hard to gauge what kind of father they're going to be. But in general, I don't know.
Yeah. Another pro for dating someone with kids, and this is for the person coming in, if the child has, okay, so I'm going to say me, for example, if I meet a guy and let's say the mother is just a deadbeat mother or whatever it is, they have bad experiences with the children. I come in and being able to be there for that child in a very soft, loving, motherly way is very satisfying for me as the other person, right? So sometimes, and I'm not saying you're looking for troubled kids or something like that, but it's like being able to provide that for a child probably feels really good if their parents absent.
Look, and here's the thing: there's bad fathers, there's bad mothers too. We don't talk about it very much, and I don't know why, but it's always the assumption is a mother's always a good mother, but I can tell you right now that's not the case. And there are, and so like, let's say your ex, wife she just goes through guys all the time. And so that when your child is going over to her house, there's always a new boyfriend. That's not always necessarily a good thing for your kid.
Right.
You can't control it because if it's her turn to have them,
right.
But, and if she likes to party and go out and she's bringing like, the next week, it's a different guy that she brings over. And then the next time they go there, it's a different guy than the last time. The kids are going to start to feel a certain kind of way about that.
Right. And if that was your scenario, let's say that was the case, and then you find a woman and she's sweet and loving, you guys have a long-term relationship and she gets close to your sons, maybe that's something that they needed. If their mother is like that, it's like, it's just satisfying to be able to be a level set person, kind of grounding somebody, you know what I mean? And I'm sure it does feel good for the people who are stepping in. If you do have a deadbeat parent, whether it's the mother or the father, feels good. Or maybe if the dad ran off, you know what I mean? Like I know mothers run away too, but it's a little bit harder. But if the dad just like peace out and another guy comes in and he starts dating your mom, and let's say he's an amazing dad or guy, and then he kind of fills in, maybe you have a really strong bond with him then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of filling in. I don't know. Another pro for dating someone that has children is that not always, but they're more likely to take the relationship kind of slow. To your point earlier, it's like you're probably not jumping into a lot of quick relationships because you should be taking your kids into consideration when you start dating. And so like waiting for them to meet them, waiting to make sure the girl's not crazy. Let's make sure she's on the level, all these kinds of things. And then also too, maybe a little bit more cautious of remarrying again. Let's say you have kids that are still at home and they're still in that growing period. I'm not going to just marry any guy that comes along. I'm going to be a little bit more selective because now I have my children to think about, rather than if it's just me. If I make a bad choice, then it's on me. It's just me that's affected. But if I have children and I choose some guy that I don't really know, you know what I mean? And he comes in and he turns out to be terrible. Like, it's going to affect my family. So you're probably going to take things a
Good.
little bit slower.
But women are flesh and blood like everybody else. They have their needs just like everybody
I know,
else
but I don't have to
does.
marry everybody I
No,
meet.
no,
That's what
you
I'm
don't
saying.
have to
Like,
marry
I'm not
them.
talking about dating guys and whatever. I'm just saying, like, if I was married, it didn't work out, I had some children, I start dating again, I'm going to be a little bit more selective on who I bring into my home
Right.
because now I have children to think about.
Yeah.
So you're probably not doing that whole rushing period that maybe you did
You
when you
don't.
both don't have
and
kids.
the thing about it is, though, is that either way, right? If it's me dating a single mom or you dating a single dad, it's difficult because you have to get to know them and really you almost have to like them from the get-go
Right.
and then build on that
Mhm.
because there's going to be so many obstacles that are going to
Right.
come up. So you need time to cultivate that. And a lot of people, because you're still, look at it from the other side, right? I'm single. I don't have kids, right? That's a scenario. Right? Obviously, it's not me, but I can put myself in a situation where I'm a single dude. I don't have any kids, and I start dating somebody. So now I'm weighing the facts of, okay, I'm gonna have to be somewhat of a father figure, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I have to deal with everything that you need to deal with that you've pointed out, and there's a lot more.
Right.
Do I really want to go forward with that?
Right.
And it's not selfish thing, right? Because it's like I'm by myself. I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
I'm looking for a relationship, and I have to take this into consideration because, and let's just say for the sake of argument, let's say it's a female, right? In the same situation, she's seeing his dad, and maybe it's like 3 or 4 kids that he has that he's the primary caregiver.
Yeah.
It's like it's not unselfish for you to think like, do I really want to go forward with this?
Yeah, this is
Because
a
it's
lot.
a lot. It's a ton. And yeah, like you have to think it through. Like,
Right.
do you really? And that's what I'm saying. You almost have to like them a lot from the get go to even go that far.
Yeah.
Because
Dating with kids is hard and it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But I think that if you go into it and you're not like fully in it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Like you said, you have to be like, okay, I know all these challenges that are going to come up and probably some that I've never even thought about before. Do I really want to do this? Because you could, but you don't want to half-ass it. It's like if I'm going to date someone with kids, it's like, okay, I know there's going to be motherly things now that are going to be required of me, and I'm going to have to be way more understanding. To your point of the scenarios of, it's their weekend and they flub on that, or the kids acting up. I mean, there's so much stuff, but if I'm not fully, my heart isn't in it, then I would be like, no, I don't want to date someone with kids.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your choice, but and another pro, and we talked about it earlier, is if you're dating someone and you have kids and they have kids, to your point of like doing things as a family together, which I think is really sweet because you get to spend time with them as well as your own kids, rather than like if it's your weekend and you're dating someone exclusively, you can, but you don't want to be like, well, I can't see you this weekend at all because I have the kids. It's like, well, if they have kids too, let's all go do something as a group.
Yeah.
I think that's really sweet. Is there any other pros that you can think of you having kids and dating someone else that has kids besides that?
It's called being put on the spot.
Sorry. I just don't have any
I didn't
experience
make
with
a list
that.
of pros and cons, by the way.
Yeah. Maybe because the kids
It will teach you patience if that's what you're looking for. It will definitely teach you
maybe
patience.
even a pro for the children. Let's say that they do all get along. It's like, okay, I have another peer that's going through the same thing that I'm going through, meaning a broken home, right? And we're in this together. And let's say that your son is around the same age as her son. They could form a bond, and that's a pro that could come out of it too.
Good. But that's what I'm saying. That's where it gets complex because now you're dealing with multiple relationships, not just with the mother. Now you're dealing with the child, and it could be fulfilling. Like it could turn into something, and eventually, if you do well, they can call you dad. Like whatever, vice versa. Say you do well, and they start calling you mom out of affection. It can work out spectacularly, but you just never know. Because you still have to maintain the relationship with the mother.
Yeah.
And you still have to try to make it work. And if it doesn't, again, now you got a problem. It's almost like it's similar to like, not exactly, but it's I'm reaching here, but let's say you're dating and you and that person have a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah.
But now you've broken up and let's say it wasn't amicable. Now you have to decide which ones are going to be your friends and which ones
Yeah.
are not going to be your friends because they might feel a certain kind of way. So now you know, like let's say like they tell you like I can't hang out with you, bro. Let's say
Yeah.
it was a bunch of couples, and one of them, you know, the dude or whatever, but because they chose that they wanted to be with her and be
Right.
her friend, it's like, sorry, bro, I can't hang out with you no more.
Yeah.
It's like, all right,
You,
I guess.
you said something a minute ago that just made me think of have you been in a scenario where, or is there appropriate length of time? Let's say you're dating someone that has kids, and have they ever tried to, I've seen this, force their kids to start calling you dad like almost immediately?
Long time
But
ago,
I'm sure that I
before I
know
got
that that
married, that happened.
happened, but like how it just feels really uncomfortable. Is there appropriate amount of time where you would be okay with her children calling you dad? Is there a certain amount of time, or do you have to be remarried?
I've never really had that experience, so I don't know if I would
Yeah.
be okay with it or not. You know what I mean? Like I guess it would depend on if we had a really strong relationship, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with them just calling me Jose. It's fine.
Yeah. I
But
don't
I
know.
one time it was, and this is slightly different, but the scenario was it was a friend of mine. He was an older guy or whatever, and his wife's mom was still alive, and he would call her mom. Now, granted, they're married, right? And you could talk about, well, of course, that's his mom,
Yeah.
but not everybody does that. Just because you marry somebody doesn't mean that you call her parents dad or
Right.
mom. You can. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But when he said it, it was a genuine thing. And somebody had asked him, like, why do you call her mom? And he was like, well, for one thing, my biological mother's gone.
Yeah.
And so, like, she was, you know, she had passed away or whatever. So she's the only mother that I have. So for him, she was filling in that void for him. And he
Yeah.
needed, like, he enjoyed calling her mom. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it can happen, but I don't think I've ever been in a situation where they ever call me dad. In this day and age, most of the time, they're just going to call you by your first name. And even my stepdad, I call him by his first name. I don't call him
Yeah.
dad.
Well, it just depends too on what age they are because one of the guys I dated that had kids, we were dating for several years and the daughter was kind of young, you know,
Mhm.
and I think towards the end she did say, "Ma," and it didn't bother me because we had been together for so long and I
Yeah.
had kind of helped take care of her and stuff. So like, I think after a certain amount of time, if you're serious, I don't think it's weird. But right away, I mean, like I said, some women,
No, not
I've
right
seen
away.
it. They're like, oh, you know, if they cycle through men quite often
Right.
and they'll be like, oh, well, go ask your dad. And you guys have been dating for like a month.
I mean, unless you're
I,
married, I guess that would be different. But you got to understand, like, once they're calling you mom or dad, it's a whole nother ball game.
but I think when the parent forces the kid to call them that, it's a psychological
Yeah,
damage that
I
you're
don't think
doing on
so.
your kid. And I don't really agree with that part.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either. And I don't know if I've ever been in a situation where she was forcing them, but
Yeah.
she would.
Maybe it's more of a younger thing. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't really see that too much. Although I will say this, even though, you know, I might call my stepdad by his first name, I still consider him, you know, a father. He was more than a father than I've ever had. So,
Right.
so I mean, don't get me wrong. It was a different relationship, but still,
Yeah.
the way I look at him and the way he interacts with my kids, like even though they call him by his first name too, again, he's basically a grandfather as far as
Yeah.
they're concerned, right? And he treats him as such.
I
And
think every scenario would be different. If my mother remarried, no, I wouldn't call him dad. Like, you know what I mean? It's like my dad's my dad. He's been my dad my whole life. But like if I was little when they got divorced, I don't know,
yeah,
maybe you would call them dad. If she got remarried when I was like 5 and then they were together till now, I don't know.
I mean, it's different because, and then we haven't even explored this, but I'll just kind of throw a curveball. In my age, I date a lot of women their kids are grown
Yeah.
and they have grandkids.
Yeah.
And
So you're
so
grandpa now?
it's not that I'm grandpa, but sometimes it's different because they want to spend time with their grandkids, which is fine. But again, they spend a lot of time with their grandkids. They spend a lot of time with their kids. You don't always know where you stand
Right.
in that dynamic. It's like, okay, where do I fit? Am I just a
Right.
guy you're dating? Because, and then especially if they're really involved in their grandkids' lives, like they take care of them
Yeah.
on a regular basis, or you know they do that. It's like, okay, so again, how do I fit into? Because
Yeah.
when dating a woman that has grown kids is much different
Right.
because they're adults, and so they understand. Like they're going to be protective of their mother, but they're also understanding their mother is a woman.
Yeah.
And, she's going to date a dude.
Yeah. Every time I've dated someone with kids, it takes me a while to feel comfortable being like you said, where do I fit in? I always feel like an outsider at first because obviously you are, but I mean, like it takes for me a lot of time to kind of get like acclimated in the whole family dynamic and to feel like, okay, I do belong here because I help take care of this kid and we do things as a family, even though it's not my child.
Yeah.
But eventually I think you can get there. But yeah, I mean, I think dating with kids, it's totally normal now, especially. But if you're not willing to be understanding and compromise and all these things, then maybe it's not for you. And like I said, it's totally fine. If you have a hard stance on, I'm not going to date someone with kids, that's your choice. But don't half-ass it. Don't be like, I don't really like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then you're just creating a bunch of problems.
Yeah. Like I said, you really have to like the other person because there's some people, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way, but that they don't have any kids and they would just prefer that if they were dating somebody let's say eventually they want to get married and they want to have their family of their own.
Yeah.
Then that's a total thing as well too. So
Yeah.
it's just like, all right, there you go. And then of course, and we didn't even touch on this either, but we talked about, let's say it's divorce, but let's say she has multiple kids by multiple baby daddies.
Eesh.
That can also get a bit complicated.
You just growing the whole pool of people that are involved in this one
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. So now it's really complicated.
Yeah.
And now you're there. And like, again, you don't know where you fit.
Now you're having to coordinate with a bunch of people on date nights and all that.
It's tough. Logistically, it's tough. Like you just don't know. And you don't know the circumstances around it. So it's just kind of like,
and then maybe you yourself have a few baby mamas. So it's like, I've seen that too. It's like you have a few baby mamas, she has a few baby daddies, and you're all trying to blend everything. It's hard. It's a lot of people up in the business. But this was a somber episode. I mean, it was a hard topic, I guess.
It was, but I mean, that's the modern dating age, man. I mean, honestly,
yeah.
I have my preferences just like everybody else, and I make my decisions on who I want to date. But I'll put it to you this way: I'll make my decisions before we go on a first date.
Yeah.
That way, because once I get emotional, then I can't think logically. Obviously, especially if I'm smitten over her. Like, yes, I'm smitten on her, smitten. But now we have all these other issues that we're dealing with. And now it's too late because I like her too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus, let me think this through a little bit. It's the same thing with like long distance relationships.
Yeah.
If they live like, 4 hours away or further in a different city or whatever, and you're like, before I even go any further, is this something that I really want to pursue?
Don't catch those feelings first.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because once you do that, it's too late.
Yeah.
And you might just end up complicating things.
Yeah.
And it might not be what you were looking for. So you kind of almost have to take that out of the equation and be like, okay, you're not emotional, so think it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could potentially be one of the best things that ever happened to you, but just understand that there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to deal with that you wouldn't. Relationships are hard enough. Now you have a bunch of extra things and scenarios that you're going to have to deal with that if you're not prepared for that, then do yourself a favor and just don't go there.
Yeah.
Just wait or just, but it's tough. I have kids. There's many dates that I've had to cancel because again, the mother just didn't want to pick up the kids or whatever, or something was going on, and it's hard. And I've had to cancel many a times, and a lot of them fizzled out because they didn't want to deal with it. They're like, no, you know what? This is too much. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I respect that. I don't.
Yeah, they made their choice.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get mad at them. Like, this
Right.
is my problem, not yours.
Right.
Like, you can make it yours if you want to, if you so choose to. But
Yeah.
it is my problem, not yours. And I'm not mad at you for looking out for yourself. That's what you should be doing. So.
Well, if you guys have any pros or cons that we didn't touch on that maybe you want to share with us, you can email us. Here's the thing, 214@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook.
Yay.
Yay.
All right. Till next time.
Adios.
Adios.